In the near future, Earth is victim of a sudden invasion by aliens. They quickly make the world's power grid and technology stop working and bring down every existing military force, leaving almost no soldiers behind. Afterward, they blow up all the major cities and capitals, killing over 90% of the human population. The aliens belong to a race known as the Spenny, and their soldiers are the Skitters, who use attack drones called mechs to kill grown-ups and kidnap children. Then they put painful harnesses on the kids to take control of them. 6 months after the initial invasion, Tom and his son Hal are running through the streets looking for food. One of their friends gets shot as they run, but the duo manages to reach a food cart and immediately get going. Unfortunately, the mechs shoot down the cart, so Tom and Hal grab whatever cans they can carry before running for cover while other teammates fight back. Then they hide in a store and watch the Skitters kill more people before running through the back door. They reunite with Weaver and his team to run away as an airship flies by, dropping a bomb that causes a bright light to consume the surrounding atmosphere. Later at the base, Colonel Porter gathers the soldiers for a meeting and presents his plan to leave the city. The alien airships can detect groups of over 600 people, so he wants to split his brigade into groups of 100 fighters and 200 civilians. It's risky, but there's no more food in this area, so they need to move if they want to survive. The next day, the local community of survivors finally leaves with anything they can carry. Whenever they come across a grocery store, they stop to search for food to no avail. Tom volunteers to go back for provisions and Weaver allows him to take 6 soldiers plus a truck. After discussing possible food locations over a map, Hal and Karen split from the team to check for aliens. While the others wait, they come across a kid that died from trying to remove the harness. Near the river, Hal hides when he sees mechs and airships passing by. There also are controlled kids marching and he notices his brother Ben among them. Hal rushes back to tell Tom that Ben is alive and says they should rescue him, but the whole team agrees there are too many aliens to risk it. When Hal tries to leave anyway, Tom wrestles him to the ground and convinces him to do things the right way. In the evening, the team sneaks into a supply store and begins loading the truck with food. Suddenly Hal is attacked by a Skitter, so Tom fires at it and his son runs away. Soon a mech also comes with open fire and starts chasing after Tom. While Hal distracts it, Tom puts C4 in a shopping cart and pushes it toward the mech, destroying it. Then the Skitter comes after Tom, only to be shot by Die. The next morning, the team makes it back to their traveling group. Tom and Hal tell Weaver that once they're done helping raid the armory for weapons, they'll leave to rescue Ben. Weaver protests but he's ignored. That night, Tom and some soldiers surround the armory and check for aliens by throwing a tennis ball. Their dog runs after it and a mech comes out, ready to shoot. Jimmy comes out to call the dog and the mech turns its attention on them, but they dodge the attack and a car explodes instead. The group and the dog have no choice but to run away. The following night the team leaves again but replaces Jimmy with someone else. However, when they enter the armory, the replacement is immediately killed. As he goes down, he shoots a man called Billy in the leg and they discover the enemy is a group of outlaws. These guys quickly take Hal and Karen hostage, forcing the others to surrender. At that moment a mech breaks in, so the group escapes through a tunnel. Eventually they make it to an auditorium where they have the dead body of an alien. While the outlaws patched up Billy up, his brother and leader John interrogates them and threatens to kill Tom. Hal stops him by saying that they can help him get weapons and John throws him on the ground, saying he's been watching them for 2 days. Margaret takes Hal away after John gives him 1 hour to bring back Weaver's weapons in exchange for Tom's life. After everyone else leaves, John shares the story of how he slowly killed the Skitter with great pleasure. He also gives him tips on how to fight the airships. On his way out, Hal tries fighting Margaret, but she's armed and quickly threatens him into following orders. Moments later Hal makes it back to Weaver, who refuses to negotiate with John and orders Mike to keep Hal prisoner until they leave. Upstairs, Mike allows Hal to leave and gets in the closet to make him look innocent. Dr. Ann sees Hal and comes along to help. When they return to the auditorium, Ann offers her medical knowledge to help Billy. While she works, John gathers some men and leaves to rob Weaver's group. John shoots a flare to alert the aliens and meets with Weaver, asking him for food and weapons. Weaver has no choice but to give him everything because they need to move before the aliens arrive. In the auditorium, Billy asks Karen to show her body, which irritates Margaret. She immediately kills Billy and the other guard, revealing they took advantage of her in the past. She lets the hostages go and they quickly rush back to their camp, opening fire on John's team. A gunfight ensues and Tom tells John to join them or die. The aliens are coming closer so John jumps on a car to dodge the incoming bomb, which kills all his men. After the explosion clears, John is cornered by Weaver. The next day, John is put into custody and Margaret agrees to join the resistance. Weaver gives Tom 3 days to find Ben, so Tom leaves with a small team to start the search. Soon they make it to the local hospital, where the kids are forced to scavenge scrap metal. While they discuss a plan, Karen accidentally pushes a roof tile and a mech opens fire, so everyone has to run away. Sometime later, they go back to the hospital to try again. They're supposed to be sneaky, but Mike loses it when he sees his son Rick. Mike runs to grab Rick, dragging him away from the group. A mech soon appears so Tom activates the bombs from their original plan to destroy it. Rick is put on the truck, and when Tom tries to go back for Ben, another mech appears and its missile blast severely wounds him. The others drag him into the truck and drive away, leaving Hal and Karen behind with the mech. Later, Tom wakes up in a tunnel where the team is hiding. He's angry to hear about Hal and Karen and immediately leaves to rescue them alone. Unfortunately, he's found by a skidder, who starts throwing him around. Tom remembers John's story and shoots the creature's legs first to then beat it unconscious. Afterward, he takes it to the school where the survivors are living now and grabs better guns for his rescue mission. The others close up a special room to keep the alien as a prisoner, intending to study it. Meanwhile, Doctors Harris and Ann get Rick ready to remove the harness. They pull the harness just enough to expose the needles, and Harris uses a torch to cut them one by one, successfully removing the harness without killing the kid. When Rick starts convulsing, they give him a sedative. In the evening, Hal wakes up and sees Karen being taken away by Ben and another kid. Hal tries reaching them, but he's found by a mech. A skidder also appears and points at a line of children, causing the mech to kill them all. Minutes later, Hal is found by Tom, who explains the Nazis used the same tactic of letting a prisoner go to pass on a message. Taking one means they'll kill the others. They'll have to rescue the whole group to get Ben back. When they return to the school, Tom has a chat with Harris, who admits he left Tom's wife behind during the attack to save himself. A furious Tom punches Harris but can't deny that Harris being alive is what will save Ben in the future. In the middle of the night, Rick and the alien prisoner open their eyes at the same time. The next day, the alien is moved into a cage and it gets violent when he sees Tom, so they have to tase it down. Afterward, John informs them of a place where they can find medicine, which they'll need for the kids so they can go through the harness removal operation. Because John knows the area and the team lost Karen, Weaver allows John to join the team for now. And checks on Rick and discovers he doesn't have fibrosis anymore, so it seems the harness healed him. While Tom's team leaves on foot, Scott manages to build a radio, and Tom's other son Matt is in charge of keeping an eye on it, and shows the skidder various pictures to see if she can learn any words from it. She thinks the creature is scared and even dares to give it water. Harris brings over the alien body they took from John's hideout, and the skidder in the cage starts losing it, which causes Matt to hear some static in the radio. Ann and Harris have some difficulty, but they manage to calm down the skidder down, so the static in the radio disappears. Harris wants to cut the alien open to study it, and Ann protests, saying learning its language is more important. Later, Tom's team finds a nest of sleeping skidders under a bridge. John wants to blow them up, but that would get the attention of more aliens, so they walk around the bridge instead. Eventually, they make it to a bike store and look for gas to fill up the tanks. While everyone is distracted, John knocks out Di and escapes on a bike. He returns to the nest and blows it up with a can of gas, which causes a dark cloud that will attract more aliens. They run to hide in the store and watch a bunch of controlled teens arrive with firearms, quickly opening fire on the team. Di gets shot in the leg, but Tom refuses to shoot back. Instead, he throws a Molotov bomb to distract them, and the team gets to escape on the bikes. A skidder tries to stop them, so Di and Tom shoot it down and leave the kids for another day. At the school, Rick wakes up but doesn't recognize his father. Mike notices him exchanging looks with the skidder, so he tries to communicate with the alien instead. The skidder doesn't react to the pictures Mike shows, but when he threatens it with a gun, the radio picks up static again. Then Mike shoves the gun into the skidder's mouth and it collapses as the static disappears once more. The group discusses the timing and conclude the aliens communicate through radio waves. Harris does an autopsy on John's alien, but it's been dead so long that everything inside is turned to mush. Meanwhile, the captive skidder controls Rick and makes him put back the harness. Then Rick tries to free the alien, but the others hear the static and show up to stop him. The skidder begins to communicate through Rick, asking them to free it or kill it. Mike gets furious and rips the harness off Rick's back. When Tom returns to the school, Margaret tells him that every pharmacy within 20 miles is empty, but she has an idea. She and Hal leave on the bikes and manage to enter a risky area to return with a bag full of medicine. The next morning, the group discusses a plan to rescue the kids, and Hal proposes to sneak into the hospital at night to kill the skidder while it sleeps, but they'll need to find a way in. Afterward, Tom and Hal practice with their crossbows since they'll have to kill the skidder without making noise. Margaret gives them a few tips and reveals she knows the hospital well, so she helps them find a good route as well. Meanwhile, Harris notices that the creature is making new sounds, so he opens the hatch on the cage for a closer look. The skidder immediately grabs him and his scream gets other people's attention. The soldiers can't shoot with Harris in the middle, so entases the alien to knock it out, but it's too late. Harris is dead. Afterward, Weaver wants to kill the skidder, but Ann thinks she may still get intel, so Weaver gives her 24 hours. Later, Hal tries to communicate with Rick, who is a shell of his former self. He doesn't talk much and warns Hal that the rescue mission will kill them all. Then Hal goes to see Tom and Weaver with an idea. He wants to enter the hospital with Rick's harness on his back so he can pretend he's controlled too. Tom disapproves, but Weaver gives him permission. Now they need to practice killing a skidder, so Ann tells them that the alien's nerve center is located in its soft palate. That's why Mike's gun knocked him out earlier. To test this, she pretends to give the alien some water, then she tases it down and stabs its palate, successfully killing it. Afterward, she wipes the skitter's blood from her hands onto the board of lost children pictures to signify the loss of her son. In the evening, the team returns to the hospital and waits outside while Hal sneaks in with a harness on his back. He carefully moves around to avoid the skitter guard, and when a line of controlled children walk by, he joins them. Hal lies down to sleep like the others are doing, getting too close to the skitter. Outside, Tom notices Hal is taking too long and doesn't wait for the signal anymore. Instead, he and Margaret split from the team to look for another way in. Back to Hal, he waits for the skitter to fall asleep and takes out a knife. Suddenly, Ben opens his eyes and the alien awakens too, so Hal tries stabbing it. As the skitter struggles against him, the kids wake up and try to stop Hal. At that moment, Tom and Margaret come in and wait for the skitter to push Hal away to shoot an arrow at it. This creates an opening for Hal to try the stabbing again, this time effectively killing the alien. Afterward, they open a window for the rest of the team and they drag all the kids out of the building. Soon all the kids are at the school getting ready for the procedure. Anne starts with Ben and quickly removes the harness, but without the skitter's control, all the other kids are starting to show signs of withdrawal. Anne works as fast as she can to free every child from the harness, but unfortunately, the last one dies before they can save him. While waiting for the results, Margaret confesses to Hal that she knew the hospital so well because she had cancer as a kid and survived. Later that night, Ben wakes up and recognizes his dad. The next day, Jeff and his wife bring their son Eli to Anne for a checkup. Suddenly, Jeff takes out a gun and forces Anne to put tons of medicine in a bag. Apparently, Harris' death and the presence of the harnessed children make many people scared and want to leave, so Jeff's family wants the medicine to use as a bargaining chip later. Anne throws a tray at Jeff and tries to run away, but Jeff quickly catches up and knocks her down. Then his family escapes with the medicine. Soon the soldiers come after them and Jeff opens fire. Before it can escalate, Terry appears behind the family and makes them drop the medicine in exchange for letting them go. After the family leaves, Terry meets with the soldiers, revealing he was in charge of another group of survivors that got attacked by the aliens. His group only has a few people left and Terry thinks the aliens are coming after Weaver's group next, so they'll need to be on the defensive for the next 72 hours. It seems the aliens are constructing giant structures and need more slaves, so the idea of sending the children away for safety comes up. The locals don't like it and fear is starting to spread through the school. In the meantime, Ben is doing lots of exercise without breaking a sweat, which he couldn't before. Matt asks him about the harness experience and Ben says that when he was with the Skitters, he wasn't really thinking. It's like someone was thinking with him. He was scared at first, but after they put on the harness, it wasn't so bad. In fact, it felt like the Skitters cared about the kids and Ben almost misses it. Hal overhears all this and thinks Ben's personality is completely different now. Outside, the soldiers keep building barriers to protect the school. Anne still feels jumpy after the attack and Margaret gives her a gun, so Anne asks her to teach her how to use it. That night, the parents and the soldiers hold a meeting to discuss the idea of sending the kids away and an argument ensues. A father is so desperate to keep his daughter that he almost pulls out a gun, but Tom calms him down and reminds him to cooperate. It's decided that Tom will choose what to do with the kids if the aliens attack, not Weaver. That night, Jimmy is on the guard shift with another soldier inside a bus when a mech arrives and opens fire. Jimmy hides, but his partner is killed. Then the mech starts shaking the bus and breaks the windows, but before it can attack Jimmy, the soldiers on the roof open fire on it. Jimmy uses the chance to escape and runs into the school to warn the others. When he crosses the door, a skitter suddenly grabs his neck, so Jimmy starts shooting at it to make it drop him. Unfortunately, the skitter grabs his leg instead. Outside, Weaver and the others arrive to fire at the mech, which suddenly retreats. The gunfire stopping allows the soldiers to hear Jimmy's screams. In the hallway, Jimmy manages to force the alien to let go, only to run out of bullets. Thankfully, Weaver arrives and blows the skitter's head up. Moments later, Terry explains this is how the attack on his group started, so more aliens will be coming soon. In the auditorium, a guy insults Ben and thinks keeping Razorback children is a bad idea, so Hal has to shut him up. Afterward, Ben tells Tom he wants to leave with Terry so he doesn't cause trouble here. This inspires Tom and he announces to the entire group that he'll send both Ben and Matt to Terry's group so they can be safe from the incoming attack. Some parents are still wary, but it's decided all the kids are leaving. A few soldiers will go along as guards and Hal volunteers, thus Tom has to say goodbye to all his sons. After lots of walking, the group makes it to the ranch where Terry's group is hiding. While everyone settles down, Terry goes to a room upstairs and reveals he is Eli. He takes the boy to the woods and meets Megan, who is harnessed but can speak a lot. She tries taking Eli away and he gets scared, only for a mech to suddenly knock him out. A skitter appears to take Eli away and Megan tells Terry he's late, but he promises he's got more kids to buy the safety of his group. He'll bring them in 2 days. Afterward, Terry goes to an abandoned room where he's keeping John in chains and thanks him for telling him about the survivors in the school. The next day, the kids have a soccer match and Ben notices that some kids like Jimmy won't pass him the ball because they're scared of him. Tessa is developing a crush on Hal, but her father Green reminds her not to get too close because of their secret goal. Mike and Hal are surprised by the fact Terry's group has fresh produce and even look comfortable here. Later, Terry and Green go to check on John, revealing they tortured him to make him give up information about the school base. They captured John when he broke in to steal food and killed the guard, who was Green's brother. Terry leaves so Green can have his revenge, only for John to free himself from the ropes and attack first. He knocks Green out but decides not to kill him. John quickly escapes, and on his way out, he finds 2 of Weaver's soldiers dead. At the school, the group continues to get ready for an attack and possibly evacuate. After 48 hours there's been no sign of another attack, and Tom worries about the kids, so he leaves with Di to investigate. At the ranch, Rick is behaving very coldly and asks Ben how he can eat their food. Meanwhile, Hal's friend Lord finds Eli's bag. Hal goes for a walk and notices there are only a guard or 2 but no patrols, so he asks Tessa about it, but she dodges the question. Lord interrupts their chat, and in private she shows Hal and Mike the bag. Hal is getting suspicious too, but Mike knows Terry from before the invasion and asks the teens for better proof. However, Mike is still worried, and in the middle of the night he breaks into the barn, where he finds Eli's clothes. Suddenly Terry appears and holds him at gunpoint while sharing the story. He explains how horrible it was to watch most of his group get killed and that the Skidders took away Megan. Then the aliens left his group alone for a week, as if thanking them for the girl. Later Megan came back under alien control with a message. The Skidders want more kids, and any group that provides them gets immunity. Mike pretends to agree to keep the secret, so Terry lets him go. Then Mike finds Hal and announces they're leaving. They wake up the kids, and on their way out they bump into Tessa, who runs to alert her dad. Soon Terry and the others come out with open fire, so Mike tells Hal to go away with the kids while he stays as a distraction. While Mike fires back at the other soldiers, Terry sneaks behind him and kills him. In the morning the kids make it to an abandoned town and stop in a house to rest. Ben points out he isn't tired and can move faster, so he should go out to get help. Hal agrees and Ben runs out of the house, showing amazing speed. He hears Terry and his men approaching and hides just in time to avoid them. Moments later Ben finds Tom and Di on the road and tells them everything. At the school, a pregnant woman goes into labor and Anne discovers it's a breech baby. A natural birth is very risky and they can't do a C-section because Anne isn't a surgeon. Thankfully Weaver hears about it and explains his first daughter was breeched too, so he knows how to turn the baby around from the outside. In town, Terry's team surrounds the house and tells the children to surrender. Hal opens fire to force them to back away while Lurd considers using the back door. One of the men is about to kill Hal only to suddenly be shot by John, who engages in a gunfight to protect the kids. John gets shot in the leg and is found by Tom, who thinks they can't win this fight and need to buy time. After taking John's ammo, Tom comes out and says John is dead. He surrenders and tells the children to come out, so they all become Terry's prisoners. The group returns to the ranch and the soldiers get ready to kill Tom, only for Weaver to shoot the guy first. His men come out of hiding and surround Terry's team, forcing them to surrender. Furious, Terry tries to kill Hal, but Tom shoots him first. At the school, the baby has been born fine and healthy. John is there too and agrees to become the base's cook. They offer a military funeral for Mike and Rick receives the folded American flag. He tells Ben that it's in humans' nature to kill and that we would never do that, identifying himself as an alien. Sometime later Hal finds Ben exercising and notices on the watch that he's been at it for 3 hours without getting tired, which is worrisome. Meanwhile Porter arrives to discuss new plans and notices Weaver is sleep deprived, but Weaver swears he's fine. The latest intel informs them that the aliens have their attention on large structures in the major cities. Porter believes the aliens are getting ready to attack, so in 4 days the soldiers will launch a coordinated attack on the structures. He also wants Tom to take a scout into the city tomorrow and find out the details behind the aliens' plan. Weaver's team doesn't have many bombs and aren't good at making them, but luckily John knows about demolition and offers his expertise. Porter is wary of him but has no choice to let him help. On their way out, Weaver notices Rick's strange drawings and the boy lets him keep one. That night, Weaver can't sleep and takes some medicine before staring at the drawing. The next day, John is taken to the lab and he teaches them how to make better explosives. Among the parts the team has salvaged, he finds pieces from an old mech, which accidentally shoots itself when they touch it. This creates a big hole in the wall. Matt watches John work on the bomb and notices the mech pieces have human bullets. John explains that the aliens raided Earth's armories and then replaced the bullet slug with mech metal, which is stronger. Matt innocently says he wishes humans had those bullets, giving John an idea. Moments later, Tom asks Hal and Di if they've noticed Weaver acting oddly. Weaver overhears them and takes offense, so he decides to take Di's place on the scouting mission to prove he's fine. In the medical ward, Anne tests Ben's pain levels around one of the harness needles and Ben has no physical reaction. Anne is worried about Rick because he hasn't adjusted well, so Ben agrees to try to befriend him. However, during their conversation, Rick keeps praising the aliens and puts Ben on the defensive. Soon Weaver, Tom, and Hal make it to the city to observe the alien structure, noticing it was made from normal Earth materials salvaged by the kids. This means regular bombs should be able to break it. They also notice that among the Skidders there is a different kind of alien, but before they can get any details, some airships fly by and they need to leave. While crossing the city, the trio sees someone moving and approaches, but it turns out to be a woman that fires at them thinking they're thieves. The guys explain they're with the resistance and Sonya comes out, saying she never left the city and knows the locations of the alien guards. Weaver doesn't trust her but the intel is important, so he keeps watch outside while Tom and Hal enter her hideout. Then he takes out Rick's drawing, wondering if it matches the city. Sonya makes some tea and Tom and Hal want to know how she survived for so long, but she dodges the question. Then she says that the aliens took her and many loved ones to a camp, but they eventually let her go. Sonya has talked to the aliens through the harness children and learned they don't want any humans left on Earth. At that moment they hear a noise and come outside to see Weaver going away on a bike, so Tom and Hal get on their own to follow him. At base camp, Anne tells Lord a big secret. She kept the skitter that Weaver shot to study it. They team up to do the autopsy and are shocked to find a harness under all the goo. Anne fears that the skitters are actually mutated humans. Lord wants to tell everyone but Anne says they should keep it a secret or people will hurt Ben and Rick. That night in Boston, Tom and Hal make it to Weaver's old house. Hal stays as a guard and Tom goes inside, finding the blood of Weaver's family from the initial attack. He finds Weaver in the backyard drinking and staring at the drawing, saying Rick drew his house on purpose to mess with him. Then Weaver shares the story of how the aliens killed his family and kidnapped his daughter. He went back to rescue her but when he brought her home and forcefully removed the harness, she died. Weaver announces he's staying in his house, not wanting to fight anymore because he's realized revenge won't bring his family back. At that moment they hear the sound of an approaching mech, but Tom refuses to leave without Weaver. While Hal runs to hide in a playground, Weaver and Tom go inside the house and open fire on the mech. It takes them a lot of bullets but eventually they bring it down and reunite with Hal. It's strange that the mech knew where to find them, so they suspect Sonya. The trio returns to Sonya's apartment and force her to cooperate. A person appears at her door with food to pay for Sonya's snitching and the guys are shocked to see Karen, who is harnessed. The other kind of alien is escorting her and after dropping the food, they leave. The guys consider bringing Sonya with them, but she's a broken woman living in the past and wouldn't turn out good. Instead they give her fake intel and leave too. When they arrive at the school, they report to Porter but don't tell him about Weaver's breakdown. He's willing to fight again because he's found his wife's glasses and thinks she may be alive. Later John shows everyone his progress. He shoots a mech with a normal bullet and not much happens, but then he shoots it with an alien bullet and it makes a hole. The key is melting the mech parts to cover all the human bullets with the alien metal. All the survivors celebrate except for Rick. In the evening, Anne tells only Tom about the truth behind Skitters and he agrees to keep the secret. Eventually Di comes back from Porter's place heavily injured and he collapses. The soldiers take him to Anne, who quickly patches Di up. She notices that Danner doesn't leave Weaver's side and Tom explains what happened in the city, guessing that Weaver is keeping Danner close in case he needs to replace Tom. Afterward, while the soldiers discuss their plan, Tom questions Weaver's ideas and Danner gets defensive. After Weaver sends everyone away, Tom admits he's worried about Weaver's mental state. However, Weaver takes offense and assigns Tom on sentry duty. Sometime later Anne and Lord tell Tom that they checked Weaver's sleeping medicine and discovered it's the kind that may affect his brain if he takes too much. They definitely think Weaver is behaving like an addict and it could get worse. Tom goes to confront Weaver, who again gets offended and orders Danner to lock Tom up. At the lab, John has a bunch of people making bullets, including Matt. Weaver asks John to make him extra bombs, and John warns him that with the materials he has, there won't be much time between lighting them and the explosion. Meanwhile, Ben helps Scott with the radio and hears some static that hurts his brain, but Scott can't hear it so Ben keeps it secret. After Scott leaves, Rick joins Ben and tells him he's scared because he knows he's changing too. Sometime later Hal and Margaret come back from scouting and tell Weaver they saw signs of skitters and mechs, but Weaver decides to continue with the mission anyway. Jimmy tells the duo about Tom and offers his help to rescue him. Then Jimmy pretends to bring food for Tom and gives him a signal as he drops the tray, allowing Tom to burst out of the cell. He and Danner start fighting all over the room and eventually Tom overpowers him, tying him up with Hal's help. Next they rush to the infirmary because Di is finally woken up. He explains Porter wanted to abort the mission because the other battalions never reported back, so they were most likely dead. Unfortunately the mechs found Porter's base too and killed him, and the explosion was what hurt Di too. This means they'll have to fight Weaver to stop him. At the same time Weaver finds Danner and frees him while learning about Tom's betrayal. In the meantime Ben asks Scott to try the radio again and feels pain at certain frequencies, so he admits that he doesn't know what he is. Tom rushes to see John and threatens him until he agrees to pull the bombs apart. Soon Weaver makes it to the infirmary and gets surrounded by Hal, Margaret, and Tom. They disarm him and argue with him, but at that moment John shows up with a gun of his own. He hasn't defused the bombs because he wants to kill some aliens, so Tom reveals he actually stole the blasting fuses. A furious Weaver takes Tom's gun and threatens him, thus Tom tries to make him see reason again and asks him to trust his people. At that moment Jimmy comes in and seeing his young face makes Weaver agree to cooperate. Weaver accepts Tom as his right hand again and calls for a meeting with the entire group. They inform all the soldiers about the truth behind the mission so they can decide if they want to risk it. Most of the soldiers including Danner leave, but enough are left behind for them to choose to try the mission anyway. While the soldiers are getting ready, Matt insults John for what he did. Ben approaches Tom and shares what happened with the radio. Since Tom is staying to protect the school, he agrees to search for parts and fix the radio, hoping they can use it to gather intel. Later, while Scott is alone, Rick appears on the ceiling and says he can't let him hurt the aliens, so he jumps on Scott to attack him. Soon the others find him and take him to the infirmary, where he confirms it was Rick who attacked him and took radio parts. Ben runs to confront Rick, who says skitters are better than humans. Terrified, Ben yells for help and Rick jumps through the window to escape. A guard tries to shoot Rick but Margaret stops him since it's just a kid. Rick keeps on running until he meets Megan in the woods. Eventually Tom also enters the woods and finds Rick on his knees begging to be taken, but Megan is already gone. Rick asks Tom to end him because he doesn't belong with the humans nor the aliens, but Tom refuses and Rick starts crying, admitting he misses his dad and that he gave Megan lots of information. Tom takes Rick to the school and gives the pieces to Scott so he can repair the radio. Then he announces they must evacuate the civilians through the tunnel behind the auditorium while some soldiers stay behind to keep the aliens at bay. On the road, the soldiers take a moment to rest and Hal notices Weaver's hand is shaking. They keep going and make it to the outskirts of the city, but the other teams aren't there so they assume they're indeed dead. Weaver gives his soldiers the right to choose and everyone agrees to keep going, so they split into 4 squads to take out each leg of the structure. Once everyone is ready, Weaver tells Hal to go back to the school and tell them to evacuate. At the school, Anne says goodbye to the civilians leaving through the tunnel, announcing she's staying to patch up wounds during the fight. Tom wants Ben to leave as well, but Ben decides to stay to try to get intel from the radio. At that moment they hear a mech approaching and the soldiers head to the barrier outside to open fire. The mech manages to shoot just one missile before the new bullets quickly bring it down. Unfortunately, there are more mechs coming and they don't have enough ammo to destroy them all. Scott and Ben keep messing with the radio and agree they need a stronger signal, so Ben runs outside to connect the radio to the flagpole. Tom helps him while the others open fire, buying some time. Once the cables are finally connected, the radio is strong enough to interfere with the alien signal. The mechs don't get orders anymore and quickly retreat. In the evening, Hal arrives at the school and tells Tom of the situation. All the roads were clear while he traveled, meaning there could be a chance to take the radio to the city safely. Before leaving, Tom asks Anne to take care of his sons and kisses her. Scott and Hal finish transforming a car into a big antenna and Tom drives it away while the remaining team members escape through the tunnel. Once Tom makes it to the city, he notices the spaceships going back to the structure and assumes as a consequence of the jam signal. He finds a wounded John with an unconscious but alive soldier and sends them back to school. Before leaving, John gives Tom the last rocket-propelled grenade. Moments later, Tom finds Weaver in a truck with a dead soldier. Weaver explains nothing they used worked to hurt the structure, but Tom wants to send them a message anyway. He shoots the RPG and hits a ship, which crashes into the big structure and sets off a series of explosions, doing a lot of damage. Afterward, Tom and Weaver start making their way back to the school, only to find Karen blocking their way. An airship lands behind her and an alien comes out, using Karen to say he wants to negotiate. Tom and Weaver are furious and threaten to shoot, but Karen stops them by threatening Ben, claiming he isn't completely free yet. Seeing no other choice, Tom agrees to leave with them, ignoring Weaver's warnings. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.